our next speaker, Bektour Iskender, around, you would actually think that he's a huge Metallica fan. But the thing is, he's a journalist turned avid space promoter or influencer. He's into the space, and he will tell you more about it. But what he's trying to tell all of us is about digital influences starting from zero. Digital influences campaigns with minimal resources. That is actually starting from zero, minimum resources and stuff. So, space guy, come on stage.
Thank you. Usually people have trouble with understanding which country I'm from. You didn't even mention my country, I think. No, it's fine. I'm from Kyrgyzstan. There were so many cases in my life when I was presented as Bektour Iskender from Kazakhstan, which is not true, and these are two different countries. But yeah, I also want to thank Veronika Belik for mentioning me in her Instagram story. With her 2 million followers, I expect like a flood of Polish followers now. But I checked it, and so far I was followed by an Instagram account called Face Massage, which, is a good start of, the whole adventure. Anyway, so I will probably not have time to explain to you what is Kyrgyzstan, although I understand that, this is usually the first question I'm being asked, when I come to Europe or wherever else in the world. But I will tell you the story of the media outlet that I founded together with my friend. And this is a picture which I think is one of the best illustrations of what we've been doing for all these years. Today is actually the birthday of our media outlet. It's been 12 years since we founded Kloop, and this picture shows a trial against one of the top criminal leaders in Kyrgyzstan. He's sitting behind the cage, as you can see, and then you see a young girl in the middle, and she's a journalist of Kloop. And at the moment when this photo was taken, she was just 16 years old. She was studying at high school, and still, she was actually going to this trial every time something was going on there, and she was reporting about the trial against, the top criminal leaders. So I really love the contrast of this picture, her being surrounded by, this grown-up man, and then she's sitting there and doing her work. This criminal leader is actually free now again. That tells you something about Kyrgyzstan. So yeah, we founded Kloop in 2007, exactly 12 years ago. This project was launched. I did it together with my friend Rinat, and our idea was initially that we were very much dissatisfied with the quality of journalism education in my country. I was expelled from the university just shortly before that, a year before that. Actually, I was studying journalism at the university, and I was a very bad student. But I was bored with everything that was going on at the university. So we wanted to create some new journalism school where students will actually learn by posting real stories, by actually writing real stories and working with the real audience. And that's how Kloop was born. And from the very beginning, the idea was that we'll focus on really young people. And there are several reasons why, and I'll explain them to you a bit later. So I have some advice written to you, well, or maybe lessons learned, from all these years of doing that. So I think one of the keys to our success from the very beginning was that we tried to stick only to one thing that we were good at, because we had really minimal resources. So, so that you would imagine it was just 3 people. And we had no office, we had no money. We had an organization that wanted to host our trainings, which was really generous from them. And that's it, that's what Kloop was at the beginning. And then we started just gathering a group of young people who we would, teach. Today Kloop is one of the most popular online media in Kyrgyzstan. I think it's in the top 5 of the most popular online media outlets in Kyrgyzstan. And the way we reached it was because of, these lessons that I learned, and one of them was, yes, exactly this, that from the very beginning we were sticking only to one format. We were really trying to become as professional as possible. And this format was something that, media in Kyrgyzstan hadn't done before that much. Maybe because, there were not so many online media in general, and there were only 2 or 3, I would say, regular, like daily based, online media outlets in Kyrgyzstan before 2007. So in a way it was a bit easy for us because the whole field was, pretty empty, the whole field of online journalism. But then on the other hand, we tried to understand, what we didn't like in those other media and what we were good at. And one thing we were good at is covering events with, live text broadcasting. And that's something that we became really professional in from the very beginning. We had, this group of young people who were really willing to learn how to do that. From the economical perspective, what was really great about it is that we didn't have to pay them any salary because, they were studying and this was part of their education process. I mean, it sounds really mean from me, right, saying this right now. But no, I mean, this was actually, this was a really nice combination. We had young people who would come to study journalism with us. We wouldn't charge them any money. And at the same time, they would be able, to write stories for you and to do this kind of live coverage of, important events happening in Kyrgyzstan, and they would do it for free, of course, because this was part of the education process. So this was the way we managed to survive during the first couple of turbulent years of existence, when we really had minimal resources. And then a key moment happened in 2010 when we understood that we became leaders in that field, in terms of live coverage, and well, we were lucky enough that we had a revolution in our country, and that helped us a lot. And because, revolution was a really interesting test for the media, so that, it was possible to understand who is actually agreeing to follow the principles of journalism and keep on covering what's going on the way it is, and who was, not willing to do that. And suddenly we found ourselves at some point that we were one of the very few media outlets that was ready to cover the revolution the way it was happening. And this is a screenshot actually of the video that we were filming during those days. And then we started monetizing this reputation that we gained. When the revolution was happening, there was a period of 12 hours, I think, when we were the only media outlet, online media outlet in Kyrgyzstan that was actually telling what was going on in the country, or to be precise, in the city where revolution has started. That gained us a lot of new followers, that gained us a lot of new audience, and then, we needed to do something with it, because there were two sides of it. On one hand, of course, it's great, when you suddenly have this influx of new people reading your stories. On the other hand, you need then to do something after, the peaceful time is coming. And this is a problem of many media outlets who became popular during revolution or during, times like this, because then you need to somehow keep on working with your audience after, everything is settled down. So we started what I call now monetizing our reputation, although back then we didn't call it like this, of course. And so one of the stories happened actually before the revolution. It was a story about this guy, son of the president, who was toppled during the revolution. And I think the first sign of us taking care of our reputation was investigating his criminal activities. That was a really great test for us, to understand how far we can go in terms of risking our lives. This was the first time when we actually got death threats for what we were doing. And this was also the time when, we decided that maybe we should actually start, self-censoring ourselves maybe, because, security services of the country, they really told us that, we should stop writing anything about the president and his family. Otherwise, as they said, we wouldn't deal with you in a legal way. And we were like, okay. But then revolution happened, so basically it saved our lives. After the revolution, we kept on doing, anything to keep on proving our reputation of investigative reporters. And that was, the years when we switched to actually more different types of formats of stories that we would publish. This was the story about the Minister of Internal Affairs, and the head of the police, who was having an illegal business in Bulgaria, which he never, mentioned in any tax declaration or something. And this was also the story which set a record on the amount of bribe that we were offered to be paid for the story to be removed. And this is not what I mean monetizing reputation, all right? We, of course, refused to accept this money, but they offered us $3,000 so that we remove the story. And we, of course, okay, sorry. Now this guy also helped to monetize our reputation a lot. This is the previous president of Kyrgyzstan, another previous president of Kyrgyzstan. We now have the 5th president. We are the only Central Asian country that had so many presidents. So this guy was the 4th president, And it was the first president of Kyrgyzstan who started like an open confrontation with us, especially after we started investigating some shady machinations that he was organizing during the presidential elections in 2017. And he published something, he said something really cool about us. After reading that story on Kloop, I had a feeling as if I've stepped into a piece of shit. That's one of his most famous quotes about us. I really love it. And Kloop comrades, well, you can read it. I mean, it's long. So basically, it's him threatening that he will sue us. It's him, calling us bedbugs, which is a wordplay because, Kloop with one O is a bedbug in Russian. And, what it led to, all these types of stories, it led to actually building a much higher trust with our readers. And one of the greatest examples of how this trust was monetized in a way was, when we decided to diversify also the source of our income, when we switched to getting money not only from grants from donors, but also from other sources like crowdfunding, for example. And in 2014, we had a very successful crowdfunding of sending me to Ukraine to cover the war, when we managed to gather more money from readers than we actually asked for. We asked for 80,000 soms and we got 100,000 soms. So this is one of the ways, a small newsroom like ours could develop also because readers trusted us, and that's why. And that led to a series of stories about the war in Ukraine, which was actually very important in Kyrgyzstan. Ukrainians are always surprised how Ukraine was discussed in Kyrgyzstan. And then we also, of course, we grew our future bosses by ourselves, because these students who we were working with, they would become then leaders in our organization. So this story about the president's son was done by an 18-year-old Anna Lilik, who would later become one of the top managers of our media outlet. Or the story about this police chief was investigated by this guy, Ulukbek, who would also become later one of the top managers of Kloop. And the whole Atambayev investigation was done by LDR, who is now the editor-in-chief, after I resigned from this position. And moreover, Anna, when she became a top manager at Kloop, she was responsible for fundraising, and she managed to fundraise $800,000, which was, enough for us to survive for like next 3 years or so. So basically, we invested into her when she came to us as a 17-year-old student in 2008, and then she grew through all the positions at Kloop that you can imagine, and then she managed to do this, which is how, sorry, it doesn't work. Oops. And then last thing I want to tell is that, I think one of the keys of our success was also that we were never afraid to do something dramatically different from what we've been always doing. At one point, I personally got tired a little bit of dealing with journalism, so I transferred all the power to younger people, and now they are responsible for the newsroom. I'm not doing journalism that much anymore, and I switched to something else. We basically opened a space program within Kloop, where this orange thing is a prototype of a future Kyrgyz satellite, which will be the first satellite of our country, which will be built by a group of women, young girls, who are mostly on this picture, but not only them. Oops, what's wrong? Sorry. I don't know what is wrong. The clicker doesn't work anymore. Now it works. But I have to go through the whole presentation. I'm sorry. Oh, no. We've seen that. Okay. Let's go further. So you basically have the recap of everything I was talking about. But so basically this is what I'm working on right now personally. Like, I'm kind of fundraising and looking for contacts for this program. And we were always thinking, and we've started having really cool trainers actually. This is a NASA engineer who is having webinars with a group of girls who are building the first satellite. And I'm the one who is finding NASA engineers for girls so that she would work with them. But the idea was that, why would we limit ourselves to only one activity? If, suddenly you want to do something else, why don't you just do that? And that's, I think, how our organization has been developing all these years. If you wanted to try something new, we would just try it. after making sure that, you know, the previous successful things you've done are now done by the next generation of people. And I think I've run out of time. I have this huge stop sign. So if you are interested in learning more about the space program or, you know, journalism or Kyrgyzstan in general, just find me and I'll be happy to answer all your questions. Thank you.